Hello, everyone. This is Joe. I'm excited to be here with you all again for our sixth session, I believe, that we're starting this week for the Learning Journey in Regenerative Finance. Really glad you're all here and very excited today because as we set the stage last week for this, we are now ready to begin offering and structuring a regenerative project incubator and accelerator for the participants in this learning journey, and then for us to refine and improve it, get it up and running, and make it available to the Earth Regenerators network writ large. So today we're going to be discussing how we're going to structure this and what the focus is and how our host team has been thinking about it so that we can invite all of you in to play in the sandbox that I talked about last week. So today we're going to talk about the design, the elements, the structures, the offerings of this incubator, and how we're thinking about it for this point in the process, knowing that it can change and evolve as we go. And so really looking forward to sharing this with all of you. We've been designing it in the facilitating host group over the last few days and having really lively discussions. Very excited to see how all of you feel about what we're thinking and what we're cooking up for you. And so with that said, I'd love to just jump right in and just start the presentation so that we can then get right into the discussion. So I'll share my screen and we can get started. So here we go. Today, oh, thank you, Elise. And Elise is offering me some gift food. So today we're going to talk about the design of regenerative project incubators and how this is something that's really important. Elise, I'm giving a webinar right now, so I need a little space, please. Thank you. Which is that we're going to be talking about how to design incubators for regenerative projects. And what's really important is we're not talking about how to design regenerative projects. Instead, we're going to talk about how to design regenerative project incubators, with the idea being that just like this picture of a fetus that is floating inside the uterus of its mother, that it needs to be held in a supportive space that can help it to grow and develop until it's able to come out and survive in the outside world, that our regenerative projects are in many ways like an unborn child that need special care, special environmental factors to enable them to grow and become living, thriving aspects of the world sometime in the future. So what I really want to start with is a framing of this regenerative project incubator by saying that a key focus is to support the emergence of living group dynamics, that our projects are groups of people working on shared goals, shared purposes, to achieve shared outcomes, and that these are things that need to happen within group settings. So a key focus is to support the emergence of living group dynamics among those seeking to regenerate the earth. And we need to hold to the insight that new life takes shape in a nurturing environment. Just like this baby needs to be in a healthy mother with a healthy womb, with healthy blood flow, with the right pH balance, with the right temperature, and other aspects that nurture the development of the fetus, we need to find out what are the environmental factors to nurture the emergence of these living groups that are the regenerative projects. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, as you recall from last week's webinar, the Learning Journey in Regenerative Finance is really moving into two parallel activities: participating in a live case study, which we'll be talking more about at another time, and the Regenerative Project Incubator and Accelerator that we're going to talk about today. And the idea is we want to be learning by doing in both of these parallel tracks, and then weaving them into each other, learning from one apply to the other, learning from the other to apply to, well, just learning all around and applying this every which way as we practice doing this together. So this is something we wanted to remember is that we're talking still very much live, and we'll be talking more about that soon. And actually, one thing we'll see at the end of today's session is that we're going to offer a special focused conversation, a separate meeting for the Las Albercas land, so that when we come to working on the live case study, we'll be setting aside time for focused work group activities around that project, and that is actually, with respect to today's session, it is actually part of the Regenerative Project Incubator. We want to incubate and accelerate the Las Albercas project as we incubate and accelerate everyone else's projects, putting us all on equal footing and allowing us to learn together as we go. So with that said, let's begin. The Regenerative Project Incubator is not about regenerative projects. It's actually about the person or the people who come together to create a project. And what I want to really invite right now is for us to think about what happens in terms of regenerative flow when a person is really thriving. And how can we cultivate this thriving capacity in a person who wants to launch a regenerative project? First thing is, we know that this person needs some cultivation. They need some help growing themselves, finding support, sometimes getting clarity about their ideas or what they really care about, and other times about learning specific tools or finding specific resources or recruiting teammates to help them, and then having the skills and the capacities to do all of that. So if we're talking about Regenerative Project Incubators, our focus is actually cultivating the person who launches the regenerative project. And this begins by seeking a connection to the heart of this person. What do they care most about? What really drives them? What are they most passionate to see happen in the world? When someone's seeking to create a regenerative project, it's going to be a project that comes from the heart. So as we cultivate our individual capacities to run these projects, we really need to deeply connect to the heart of the person who's launching a project, or if you're launching a project, deeply connect to your own heart and your own passion and drive to understand what the project is really about. From here, the person can align their heart connection with the purpose of the project. Notice this can work for someone who's starting a project, but also for someone to find an existing project that they might join. So this heart connection allows a person to connect what they care most about with the purpose of a project that either they join or that they create. And if a person has a deep heart connection and is aligned with the purpose of their work, this grows the feeling of aliveness, the passion, the inspiration, the commitment, the dedication, the devotion, the energy that's going to be needed to take directed actions toward directed goals. So this energy that is flowing through the heart connection into the purpose of the work grows the aliveness of the person who's doing the work. They'll feel more vibrant. They'll see with brighter colors. They'll taste food with greater hunger, greater appetite, and they'll feel more vibrantly connected with the world. And someone whose aliveness is growing is going to have an easier time connecting with others, to share their passion, to find others who share their passion, to ignite this flame of inspiration and motivation. And this helps the others to bring resources and support back to cultivate and continue the development of the person. So you see how the way that we're envisioning regenerative projects here is around the regenerative flow of heart connection aligned with purpose, feeling the aliveness as we engage in meaningful actions, which helps us to connect with others in meaningful ways, which helps us to grow and develop as people. And as we're doing this, the regenerative projects make an impact in the world, and they also make an impact in us. So you see how the focus of the incubator is on the people who are going to run the projects to create this kind of a pattern within them and between them, so that whatever projects they take on are more likely to flourish and succeed. Now, why is it that we need to cultivate these things in ourselves? It's because most of us have experienced a lot of times where we were not in nurturing environments. And there's a name for this in childhood development and public health research. It's called adverse childhood experience. it turns out that a person who grows up in the world with a large number of adverse childhood experiences has a really hard time finding their purpose, connecting with their heart, feeling alive, and pursuing their goals. They also have a hard time connecting with others, seeking help, feeling loved. And all these things happen because they lack nurturing environments. So what's interesting about this research on adverse childhood experience is it lets us see some of the features of a non-nurturing environment. So let's just roll through these really quickly, shall we? Physical neglect, like not being fed or being kept separate from others. Emotional neglect, where people don't pay attention to your needs. These are things that could undermine the nurturance of a person. Also, there's physical abuse, emotional abuse, or sexual abuse that could undermine or hinder the development of a person, leaving them with traumas. They also could have household substances that they're using. This is like drugs and alcohol. They could have various kinds of psychological unwellness or mental illness, like being depressed, not feeling motivated, feeling pain and despair. They might have a family member that's been separated from them, possibly because they did something that was antisocial, like being put in jail for breaking a law. Or it could be that the parents separated or got divorced, and the child grew up without the love and support of their entire family. Or it could be that the child watched their caregiver being treated violently by another person. So these kinds of adverse childhood experience show us what a non-nurturing environment looks like. And what's interesting, if you flip each of these around, you could see what a nurturing environment looks like, where we receive physical and emotional support. We feel intimacy and connection with ourselves and others. We're able to manage healthy relationships to the ways that we handle our pain, the ways that we seek pleasure in our lives. And we're able to have healthy, supportive social environments where the people we care about are able to take care of us, and we see them being treated well by others. And this is actually summarized beautifully in a book that I'd like to recommend right now, a book called The Nurture Effect by Anthony Biglin, or Tony, as he likes to be called. Tony's a friend of mine and one of my mentors, and you can see that he's a co-author, or he's actually been a co-author with two of the founders of the, actually he's worked with all three of the founders of the pro-social framework that we've talked with before. And what Tony Biglin did was he and another person, another researcher in public health, were asked to do a survey for the US Congress where they assessed from the billions of dollars spent by the National Institutes of Health in the United States on public health outcomes, what were the key findings? And they found the single pattern that unified all research studies, which was this: every social ill can be addressed by providing nurturing environments, and it can be done in a cost-effective manner. So what they found was if a person drops out of school, has substance abuse, is suicidal, you could pick any number of social ills or social challenges that a person might face. And in every case, those issues are helped by creating nurturing environments of support. And this is actually something he summarized as he was reviewing this study. He said, this is Tony Biglin speaking, nearly all problems of human behavior stem from our failure to ensure that people live in environments that nurture their well-being. So how does that work? Well, here's a nice example. A nurturing environment has a number of features to it. It has the capacity for open and inclusive dialogue, for people to be leaders or to seek healthy leadership, to be included in the processes that affect them, to have empathy toward them and to feel empathy toward others, to have a feeling of emotional and physical safety, to feel like the environment is fair and just, and that they can trust in the processes, they can trust in the people, and they can trust in themselves, and that the people feel respected and they feel respect for the others in this environment. So you can see how in a nurturing environment like this, all of our regenerative projects are going to flow and they're going to be more likely to flourish. And so what's really interesting here is instead of just focusing on how to improve our projects, what we want to do is really create nurturing environments for the people who will be managing and participating in the projects. And by doing this, we actually directly improve the projects themselves by increasing the capacities of everyone involved to make the project successful. So now, here is what we came up with in the host team for the Regenerative Project Incubator and Accelerator. We realized that this is just the first prototype, and that we can evolve and change all of this and add new things and take things away as we move along. But what we've realized is that there are 4 key offerings, 4 key parts of this incubator that we feel are important to offer when we're getting started. And I've named them here as design sessions, teach-ins, office hours for both the Seeds cryptocurrency and for anything else in general that might be sought by members of this learning journey, and the ability to create advisory circles. So let's talk about each of these one at a time so you can start to see how they fit together as an incubator. The first one is the advisory circles. This is where you might have a project idea and you'd like to invite other people to hear your idea and maybe join your project. So you're seeking the advice from other people who are your peers. They're members of the cohort of this learning journey, or they might be members of the Earth Regenerators community, or some other regenerative community that is somewhere out there in the world. And as you propose your idea, you would like to have people who would come together with you and help you improve it, give you advice, offer you emotional support as you're doing the work, offer to work with you. So the idea here is that we create circles of advising where people can propose their ideas to each other to improve their projects, or people can come together around a shared passion and create a truly equal circle of sharing on how do we address this thing we care so much about? Who else wants to be involved in it? What kinds of projects would make sense that would fit with this shared passion that we have? So for example, if there is a group of people that really care a lot about gender equality as it relates to regenerative projects, or if there's a group of people that really cares about honoring honoring indigenous knowledge and indigenous lifeways, and they want to bring this to regenerative projects, these could be shared passions. And you could think of any shared passion you want that's related to regenerative projects. And there might be a group of people that say, hey, we should all really talk about how to decolonize the mind, or we should all really talk about biodiversity, or we should really talk about how to conserve key ecosystems to protect certain kinds of wildlife, or any other shared passion that might exist. The advisory circles can self-organize around them and give each other advice and support about how to address the issues associated with this passion. The second way that we see this incubator working is through design sessions, which is when there's some struggle or some problem that's shared by a lot of people. For example, someone may really say, I've got this project I'm trying to do, but I can't recruit other people to work with me, and I find like I'm always working alone. Who else feels like they're always alone and isn't able to connect with other people around this work? Or it might be, I struggle to recruit the resources I need for my project to be a success. Who else struggles to recruit these resources? Whatever the shared struggle may be, the design sessions are a way to organize around and learn from them, which is that someone steps forward, and initially it would be members of our host team, but eventually it could be anyone from the incubator community, could facilitate a design workshop around this shared struggle and cultivate pathways forward with the participants. So imagine here, for example, that we want to address the challenge of how do I leave my job working for a corporation living in a city and take all of the steps necessary to move toward a regenerative life? Or another shared struggle might be, I have small children and I'd like to raise my children in a way that everything they know is regenerative, so they have connection to nature and other things. How do I make changes in my life, and how do I raise my children? Whatever the shared struggle might be, we can facilitate design workshops around them, or create groups, like work groups and forums for them, where people can design solutions together. So this is another way that we can support people as they engage in shared struggles so that regenerative projects emerge from them, and they're more likely to be successful. The third way that we see the incubator working is through teach-ins, which is when a member of the community has some learnings to share. And notice that we stress here, this could be offered by anyone in the learning journey. So everyone who's listening to this webinar right now might have some learnings to share with others and say, I would like to offer a teach-in on this topic I know a lot about, because I think people here might be interested in it. Would anyone like to attend my teach-in? And these teach-ins are a way for members of the group to draw from the knowledge capital and the experience of other members of the community. And it's an opportunity for members of the community who have knowledge and experience to be valued and to be appreciated for sharing that knowledge and helping other people to have better projects. And the more each of us does this, either giving or receiving this knowledge, the more we feel generous and we feel open to sharing and we feel cooperative and trusting to give our ideas and our knowledge to other people as well. And this creates that regenerative flow between people as we all learn together how to do regeneration at different scales with different focus. Then the fourth way that we see the incubator working is to have an office hours. And this was an idea that Tyler suggested for the seeds work because several people have been coming to him about cryptocurrency and regenerative finance. So we're going to begin it with a seeds focus. But this could actually open up for office hours about just about anything related to the regenerative projects. So the idea is that we're going to set a time. And so we'll talk with Tyler and he'll probably send a poll out to all of you to see what time works best. Where he'll have office hours that says, here's the Zoom link. I'll be here for this time for the next 90 minutes. Anyone who would like to drop in and talk about whatever you'd like, come on by and I'll be here waiting for you. So that people know that they always have someone who will listen to them and can give them advice about anything at all, just so that they know that they're supported and that they're not alone and that there are people here who are ready to help them. So you see, the key idea here is to provide nurturing environments. What kind of nurturing environments? The kind that cultivate regenerative leaders. Those of us who are creating projects are leading regeneration. So we want to cultivate more regenerative leaders. Through the interactions of these regenerative leaders, regenerative projects will blossom into the world with a great diversity and great quantity as they spread through these regenerative leaders as they're all taking actions together. Now, what's interesting here is, as a member of this learning journey, you're already a regenerative leader. You're probably already doing regenerative projects. And we have different ways of saying what is and what isn't a project, which isn't important for our purposes now. But what is important is you're in this learning journey because you want to learn how to create financial flow that supports regeneration of landscapes and cultures. And in that way, you're already a leader of regeneration. And you're aspiring to be a better one, which is what this incubator hopefully will help you do. So the Regenerative Project Incubator is this blending together of advisory circles, design sessions around shared struggles, teach-ins where members of the community can offer their learnings to other members of the community, and a set office hours for anyone to drop by and just chat and connect or ask specific questions. And in this way, our hope is to create a nurturing environment for all of our regenerative projects to grow and to bloom. And we already have the first teach-in opportunity, which is a way of pitching your project. So for those of you who have a project and you like to recruit people to it, what we want to suggest is that you use something called pikakucha. A lot of people pronounce this pikakucha, but it's actually a Japanese word, pikakucha. And it literally translates from Japanese as the quiet murmuring of good conversation. And what they've done is they've created a way of having structured haiku. If you remember what a haiku is, a poem that's got a very specific limit of 3 lines and a certain number of syllables in each line. This is a structured haiku for giving a PowerPoint presentation, where what you do is your presentation is 20 slides. Each slide only lasts for 20 seconds, and then it automatically moves to the next one, which means that you end up with 400 seconds, or about 5 minutes of time, where you are giving a talk about a topic, and you're only allowed to make 1 point each 20 seconds. So what we want to do is offer a teach-in on how to give a Pakakacha talk for regenerative projects for anyone who's interested in attending it. And we'll put up a poll in the course forum to invite this first teach-in and set the schedule for it. So what we'll do is we'll ask who is interested in attending, and then we'll find a time that works for everyone. So be on the lookout. This first teach-in is coming your way very soon. Second thing is we're going to offer our first design session, which is one that I'll be leading, which is a work group that will form for the Las Albercas project that we talked about last week. So the live case study for Las Albercas, so this 10-hectare piece of land you see right here, where we need to engage in land negotiations, raise money for the land, set up a regenerative finance model for how to structure the investments and donations, and then start building a regenerative design process and eventually create an eco-versity on this land. This project is going to need a work group, and our first design session will be, how do we set up this project as a regenerative finance project for this learning journey? And I will post about this in the course forum in the next few days, so look for the announcement. It's coming your way soon. So that's it. Let's talk about how this regenerative project incubator might work, and discuss together how we can incubate it and launch it for all of us here. So, hello everyone. What do you think of our regenerative project incubator? I'd love to hear initial reactions in the chat box for anyone. I'm seeing that Meaty loves the whole design approach. Marco thinks it's exciting. Skip thinks it's cool. I think Skip is cool. Max is saying he loves it. Stan, high fives on the nurture effect. Stan lives fairly close to where Tony Biglin is in Eugene, Oregon. Gail, this is something we're all gonna love. So let's get started. What I would love to do right now is invite questions, and the questions maybe to just give us a little more structure for how you might pose your questions. If you have a question about how the Regenerative Project Incubator works, any of the elements we talked about, then please pose those questions, and I'll invite you onto the screen for us to discuss them. If you have ideas for how you see this playing out that you'd like to plant as a seed for everyone to hear, then you can also pose not just a question, but an idea. So you can say, in the Ask a Question section, I don't understand how this design sessions work. Who hosts those? Or maybe you have some other questions. Or you might say, how are we going to roll this out to the Earth Regenerators community? You know, or you're just like, could you give me a concrete example of? And then we can talk about it. So if you have any questions, then drop them in the Ask a Question box. And also, because we're doing something a little bit, I don't know, like sneaky here, I called it to the host team. I said, we're gonna have a frame that's a Trojan horse. We're gonna say that we're gonna work on regenerative projects, but actually we're gonna work on regenerating people. And I hope that it makes sense how important these nurturing environments are for actualizing us as human beings, so we can do our work alone and together, which is what we need, is more people capable of participating wholly with all of their heart, with all of their sense of purpose, connecting deeply with others with a strong feeling of aliveness, and what we talked about in the webinar. So I see there are two questions that have popped up, so we can go ahead and just start jumping in. I will go to Gail first. So Gail, I'll invite you on the screen. And Gail's saying, I'd like to participate in the Pakakacha. Could this lead to a presentation to potential advisory circles? Yes. Tell me what tell me more. What are you thinking here? What's coming up for you?
Well, I put a project on the spreadsheet, and that's One Earth. One Earth conservation is my heart, and I know that. It's been there for a long time, but we're kind of at this plateaued state, and we need to find a way to move forward again. A little bit of burnout going on, a little bit of discouragement because of some of the terrible things that have happened this past year. And yet our projects continue to do pretty well. Despite all the big bad things that have happened, we're saving more birds and people at the same time. So I'd love, and I'm a graphics person. So the idea of doing a slideshow and doing a little presentation gets me all excited. So but one of the ideas I've already talked about is to have some kind of advisory council. So you're calling it advisory circle to help us with advice. But I also like some of these other things. Like I'd love to learn. I'm starting with Tyler already 101 how to get One Earth involved with seeds, as well as myself personally. Yeah. So, but it's hard. It's very complicated. So it's going to have to be one baby step at a time. But anyway, So if I knew that I did this presentation and then had that as my motivation, that I'll be then presenting it to potential advisors, that makes it more exciting for me. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, let me tell you what we were thinking. We were thinking that right now there is a topic section under the course, under the learning journey, that is called Regenerative Projects. And we've put the link to the spreadsheet and a couple of things there. But that could easily become a forum for people to promote their projects. So if we have a set of people that learn how to give this Pakakacha type of format, then you could record that talk, or you could give it live and then have a recording of it, and then use the recording to invite people to join an advisory circle for your project. And so the idea would be, or one idea, because there are lots of ideas here, but one idea would be that we would have a place where people could promote their projects to invite people to join them. And that we would provide support in sort of standardizing how it's done, so people know what to expect and how to give a presentation and what they're getting out of them. We can all practice sharing our ideas more effectively. And then we can find ways to connect with each other personally around what we care about, which is underlying the projects. Like, who is Gail and why does she care so much about parrots? Oh, I'm so curious to, like this personal connection that really drives our ability to work together. So what we'd like to do is create some kind of a curated forum that's curated by the members themselves, and then see if this helps. And so it's an experimental idea, but that's absolutely what we have in mind.
And I just want to say to everybody in the class that I went to the Pekakucha website, and they have samples there. And I only watched one, and it was about giraffe conservation, and it was fabulous. It was like a mini documentary. So there's some really good sources there to get inspiration from.
Yeah, I gave Pakakacha, there's an organization in Seattle called Pakakacha Seattle. They organize the events. And I gave, you can imagine, 20 images, 20 seconds per image, and I explained how to make the entire city carbon neutral. So you can do big, crazy stuff if you're crazy enough, like this guy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing together, Gail, and being in that teach-in with you.
Thank you
very much. Great question there, Gail, and great connection. I see Stan is here. Wait, but Stan, I don't know that I saw a question in your question, weaving, nurturing Yembi with Columbia, but I'm just curious if there's something more, maybe drop in the chat box what you had in mind. And I'm going to maybe jump right over to Anita's question for now, because I don't have enough clarity about yours to know exactly what you were asking. But I think Anita's got a really good question. She's like, this all sounding like extroverts heaven. Is there going to be some sort of support for introverts? What I would say is, there better be. That this needs to really support the different kinds of people and nurtures us, each is our own. But Anita, I'd love to just share a little of your thoughts about this. How do you feel this incubator, the way we're beginning to set this up, can help a greater diversity of personality types and other ways people show up and express themselves in this work?
So are you hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I'm one of the people who've actually been around this a little bit longer. So like Gail, there's some sense of ups and downs and maybe a little bit of stuckness right now even. And there may be other people with similar things. And I'm just hearing, put it out there, do this, do that. And I'm going, no, 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 no. How about partners? How about being concerned about the people who aren't jumping right in that way, and being able to extend hands to them to say, what kind of help can you need, and can I partner you up with somebody who maybe is more extroverted, just to help this process be fair.
Yeah, that makes me think of two things that we're trying to build into this already. One is the idea of the help desk. The help desk starts with like, well, there's Tyler, and you could ask him about seeds. But it also becomes a place of people who are wanting to just have a space. They know there's always someone there they can go to talk to about the things that they're working on. That it's just like a one-on-one space. And then, of course, you can schedule one-on-one times with people as well. But it's sort of like an entry point for that. And the other is the design sessions around shared struggles, where it can come up in any way in conversational flows. So it doesn't have to be someone who's like leading and advocating. It could just be that a conversation comes up, or over several conversations, a shared topic continues recurring, that it makes sense to organize focused discussion around. And then it's around facilitating that discussion. And I think both of those are very naturally aligned with both extroverted and introverted people. So I think it's more about how do we almost create the feeling of invitation and welcome for the different ways that people show up as we're engaging these activities. But I'd also love to hear any suggestions or ideas you have now and later as we go along, to be sure that this really is welcoming for people of different expressions.
And so I would say, I don't know that I have anything now. You might ask questions that I might answer. It would be nice to know who would be appropriate to approach later, rather than just sort of feeling like I have to somehow get attention just from this big group. What are the ways of helping those of us who are quieter?
Yeah, for right now, it's there are 5 people who are hosting this learning journey. So that's really easy to say, well, here's a set of people you can reach out to that are facilitating the process. But as this becomes like a standing forum of some kind, as we move it into its next phase, it will need to have some kind of a moderation team or facilitation team or something, which will be made clear as that takes form. So I'm not
also, I put this in terms of introverted grandma, and I'm going to say that a lot of grandmas are going to be more introverted just because of this feeling of having less power in the world. And that also there are huge numbers, not necessarily in this group, but in all the places that we live, right? Huge numbers, particularly of women who outlive men, who need help, who don't necessarily have it, who may have property and may have land. There are farmers here in this area who don't have sons and daughters to take over from them, who are getting older. And some of the same issues may be there that it's possible to do partnerships with, but we need to know how to support this kind of situation. And I'm just an example who I've put myself out here to say, yeah, I'm in this situation. I actually need partners. I don't just need ideas about what I can do. I can't do that much anymore by myself. So what about me as someone who represents a lot of other people that might be important in Earth regeneration?
Well, this will be a great topic for us to explore, maybe as a design session at some point in the process as we're setting up these incubators. I think it's really important for us to find patterns of connection, and one pattern of connection is shared struggle. So I think this is really a good topic. So thank you so much for bringing it up, Anita.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, thank you. Let's see. So I think I just had the other question from Stan, and Stan added some comments into the chat box. Sorry, Stan, I just didn't know what you were thinking. I'll invite you on the screen and we can chat about it a bit. And if anyone else has questions or comments, please let me know. And we can talk about them right now. So I know Stan is, let's see, Stan, are you able to join me? Is it working?
There we go.
Nice.
I thought I'd try to share my cockatiel with Gail. So I moved from my office. Well, first of all, this is really inspirational, and my wife's seeds. We're getting our tomatoes going. I love these stories, and I especially love the stories with your daughter. Those are sort of all-in stories, and the key to sort of the nurturing story and the pro-social approach. So I'm benefiting a lot from this, but I live here in Portland, and I've been doing trying to do this kind of stuff for a while. So I'm deeply along with commitments to my daughter and our backyard and stuff like that. So I'm very interested in sort of how to do some of the weaving, so it's not so selfish, So I am feeling fortunate, so it's not so much a problem for me, but I can tell that nurturing is key, and my wife and my family have really benefited from nurturing processes. And I'm remarried to a psychiatrist, so I understand ACEs effects. So I'm very interested in doing that, and I'm wondering how do you see the weaving part of it? So I know you've worked with Kate Rayworth, and Kate Rayworth is really excited about working with Portland because of a lot of this community-driven tradition. So how do you see? Is it a bad idea to try to think about weaving with the donut economy stuff of her action labs? Or is that, should it be deferred till later? That's kind of basically my question. And it's similar with your daughter. My granddaughter is the same age as your daughter, roughly. How do those stories weave together? I'd love for you to do a book.
That's
what I'm asking.
I think one thing that's really important is going to be that we proactively make connections instead of haphazardly letting connections happen. So one thing is there are a lot of networks. So the Donut Economics or the Donut Cities network is an example where they are proactively inviting people, and people are joining a network. So by joining the network, you are weaving by just participating in the process of connecting the network that's growing and adding more capacities to it. What's more interesting, I think, than that, because that's sort of that's just how that process works, is how we proactively look for shared patterns. Like what Anita was saying earlier about how her personal experience connects to the shared experience of a category of people who may not be connected to each other. So they're a category in some shared pattern, but they're not a category in some lived experience connection. It's not like they all share the same context. It's that they all share a pattern level dynamic that is in many different contexts. And the weaving here is like weaving the contexts. So like your granddaughter and my daughter chatting with each other, one of the times you're on this call and she's playing around in the background, would be our kids getting a chance to have their context blend for a moment. And I think this way of taking contexts where the patterns are similar and blending them can be really powerful.
Well, and I know you've worked a lot with Stuart Cowan, so we have a lot of shared pattern language scaling. So in my backyard, in my backyard, the hardest tests are in my backyard. So we are doing, a certified backyard and getting native species and more birds besides, our cockatiels calling in a lot of birds. And so we're trying to get certified as a bird-friendly, native backyard. And then, of course, the neighborhood is clustering a bunch of backyards and with certification signs. And then the Audubon Society is also supporting the Salmon Nation around Salmon Certified City. So it kind of scales up from, one place, your backyard, to kind of a food pattern of first foods. Are we supporting the salmon run? Are we supporting the bird migration? And then with Kate Rayworth, she's very interested in leveraging that into, 15-minute neighborhoods. What does it mean for Black Lives Matter to have support in more than one community?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you see that sort of pattern, but it'd be good to work. So my daughter's a musician, and we hosted a harpist from Colombia, and we had him stay in our
Oh, lovely.
house, and we raised funding for rainforests. So it'd be fun to somehow eventually reconnect the arts community to the rainforest community. But I think that's kind of a weaving style, and I don't know if it's bad to bring it up or how you think about it.
Well, I think this relates maybe to one element of the Earth Regenerators community is we'd like to be able to see how projects can connect to each other through some natural organizing principles. And so we've talked a lot about bioregionalism and creating bioregional learning centers and a network of them. And what does it mean to have bioregional or regenerative education, both bioregional and regenerative education. And I think that one of our opportunities by having an incubator for projects is we have a space where we can see shared struggles, shared opportunities actually to travel from one bioregion to another, to invite each other from place to place, and that the weaving will naturally flow in the goodwill that's connecting us as people in those environments. And so my hope is that by having a nurturing environment for people wanting to do regenerative work, that these weaving connections will sort of vicariously happen. They'll just happen by proximity. Like, oh, you have a cockatiel and so does Gail, and you guys are now talking about it. Whereas you didn't know to talk about it until you came into shared context. I think that sort of blending of space is a really wonderful opportunity for this idea of having a nurturing environment for regenerative projects. Because we'll discover unexpected connections, like the bird connection. That,
No, I think
no,
so. I
it's really
believe
powerful.
that pet stories can train people to be nurturing, and we did it in our neighborhood with dogs training us to sniff each other. I mean, get to know each
Yeah.
other.
And by the way,
think,
Gail asked you in the chat box, what's the name of your cockatiel?
oh,
I
Fluffy.
just saw that. Fluffy.
And Fluffy's a little more lonely. Used to have Linus as a roommate.
Gail's his name Dusty.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
the other
Fluffy
thing
could Dusty get just. I love Fluffy could be the duster for Dusty, and Dusty could be the duster for Fluffy.
Yeah, and I think the other thing besides pets is food. And so, we do have a good coffee connection with Colombia, and it's real, cities to farmers. And so there might be food patterns that help us do kind of more indigenous things. Anyway, this topic of weaving and the patterns that allow us to do Yes in My Backyards together with distributed backyards would be that's kind of my question, how to get that started. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Stan. It's a lovely topic and lovely to see you again, as always.
Yeah, cheers.
All right, bye-bye. Oh, sorry, Stan, I cut Stan off as he was saying something else. Apologies for that, Stan. So we've been going for about 50 minutes. We don't need to go the whole hour just because that's the time we've slotted. So if there are no other questions, it's okay. And we're also going to have a nice opportunity in the community Zoom calls to explore all of this further. But what I'd love to invite right now is in the chat box, if everyone would just share briefly, how are you feeling about these ideas for a regenerative incubator and the way that we're approaching it? Just would love to hear, how are you feeling? Like are you feeling excited and ready to jump in? Are you curious but hesitant? Are you unsure how you fit in? Just would love to hear how you're feeling about this idea as the next stage in the evolution of this learning journey. And then after that, we'll just do a quick wrap up and close. Yeah, how to make a particular offering, we'll explore that for sure. Yeah, focus on people should take away a lot of the stress because our projects are going to evolve and we don't even necessarily have to know what they are right now. Yeah, Anita, I'm feeling hopeful and uncertain too. I can relate to you very well with that. Stan, I think it's also better than a Y incubator for sure. And Guy, high five. I'm feeling great too. And Kathy, I know that you're going to fit in somehow, and I'm excited that you're excited about Las Albercas. A why incubator? This would be a good Google search topic. And actually, for anyone who's familiar with why incubator, to maybe write a post on the forum for the class, critiquing it through the lens of regenerative finance. Because a why incubator is a sort of startup process for social enterprises where you have venture capitalists and investors and people make pitches for their projects. And there's more details to it than that, but it would be really nice to juxtapose or to do a critique to just see what we see by looking at that. Gaia, we would like to give you support because you do great projects. I don't know if you're still doing the cooperative work in Spain, but I know that you're doing some good stuff last year. Yeah, Y Combinator, not Y Incubator. Thank you for the correction there, Guy. Skip, I'm excited too, and I'm looking forward to playing together again. And yeah, so maybe this is a good time for us to say thank you everyone for being here today. I'm looking forward to seeing where we go with the Zoom calls, with the design session. Oh, excellent, Guy's still doing some awesome work in Spain with largely abandoned land and cooperative ownership models. Very interesting stuff for sure. Anyway, but back to this. So we're going to be sharing very soon the invitation for the first design session, the first Pakakacha session, or the first teach-in, which will be on the Pakakacha for describing your project or your passion. And also to set the office hours, the SEEDS office hours, which Tyler will be doing with us. So we'll have some activities in addition to webinars and community Zoom calls. And we even have the possibility, which we can discuss in the community Zoom calls, of using the time of the weekly webinars for more of this design work. So that'll be coming all this week as we get involved in the Zoom calls and we take next steps. So with that said, thank you all for being here. Lovely to see you. And I'm looking forward to seeing where we go. So onward, fellow humans.